A special grand jury is bringing an indictment against the Trump Organization and its chief financial officer, so CFO Allen Weisselberg, surrendering this morning to authorities in New York. Charges expected to be unsealed this afternoon. Chief Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl has the latest.
After a 2-year investigation into Donald Trump's business dealings, the first criminal charges against his company have been filed and are now just hours away from being revealed in court. Sources briefed on the investigation tell ABC News the charges against the Trump Organization and its longtime chief financial officer, Allen Weisselberg, include tax fraud. Weisselberger has worked for the company since the 1970s. In one of his old books, Trump said of Weisselberg, quote, "He did whatever was necessary to protect the bottom line."
Replacing George this week is my chief financial officer, Allen Weisselberg. And you think George is tough? Wait till you see Allen.
Sources briefed on the investigation say the company and Weisselberg are accused of avoiding taxes on fringe benefits, including cars, school tuition, and rent-free apartments. The charges come after the Manhattan district attorney obtained Trump's tax returns and other financial records in a battle that went all the way to the Supreme Court. Trump has long insisted he runs a clean company and that the investigation is politically motivated.
The continuation of the greatest and most disgusting witch hunt of all time.
Weisselberg is the most important person in the Trump Organization who is not a member of the Trump family. The big question now is whether prosecutors can get him to testify against Donald Trump. Deidre?
Chief Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl, thank you. And a statement released to ABC News on behalf of the CFO, Allen Weisselberg, after he surrendered to authorities this morning in New York, saying Weisselberg intends to plead not guilty and he plans to fight these charges in court. We will have full coverage of the charges as they are expected to be unsealed later this afternoon, right here on ABC News Live. In the meantime, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced members of the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th assault on the Capitol. The committee will have a total of 13 members, 8 named by Pelosi, 5 assigned by Republican Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Pelosi named Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney to the committee, shocking McCarthy.
Well, I was shocked that she would accept something from Speaker Pelosi. It would seem to me, as since I didn't hear from her, maybe she's closer to her than us.
Learning new details about what the White House knew about the chaotic crowds on January 6th. We are bringing in right now former Republican Congressman Denver Ringelman and ProPublica reporter Joshua Kaplan. Denver, I'd like to start with you. You say that Liz Cheney is a great pick for this committee. Why is that? And then secondarily, what do you make of Kevin McCarthy's reaction?
Well, number one with Liz, I mean, she's smart. She's fearless on this. And she has a lot of data that other people don't. I mean, when I talked to her right after January 6th happened, it was a couple of days after, Liz and I talked, I'm the chief strategist for the Network Contagion Research Institute, and we had already identified those individuals that mission planned this, and there was a minimum of 7 white nationalist groups. So there's a baseline of facts here that's pretty strong when you do this. And Liz is really not afraid of anybody. She has more guts than most of the people in the Republican conference anyhow. As far as Kevin's reaction, it's a little bit interesting that he's saying maybe, she's more with them than us, when really Liz is just for the American people. This is about the American people and finding out the facts of what happened, not just the specific law enforcement issues we see right now, but what is the past history? What's the hot wash? What's the analysis? How did this happen as far as disinformation flow, right? Who started this? Was this troll-based, right? How did charismatic leaders or, other political people, how did they push this narrative? Why did January 6th happen, and can it happen again? All that is a valid intelligence and analytical methodology that we need to go through. So again, Liz being on this is a great pick. The reaction to me is disingenuous, and I think we still need to do this for the American people in a nonpartisan way.
So, Denver, I want to pick up on some of your points there with Josh, because, Josh, you recently published a piece at ProPublica showing that senior Trump aides knew more about January 6th than previously thought. What did you find?
Yes. So we found that they were senior Trump aides were substantially more involved in planning and preparing for the rally than has been reported so far, and it kind of falls in 2 buckets. One is maintaining control of the stage. There was this grave fear inside, former campaign officials inside the White House that radicals in the Stop the Steal movement would try to co-opt the stage. And White House officials took some pretty drastic steps to try to maintain control of the stage. And those conversations, we confirmed, reached to some of the highest levels of the White House, including Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. But the concern there obviously was one of optics, of preventing an embarrassing scene that could make the president look bad. More consequentially, there were discussions around the march that these same radicals that they were fighting to keep off the stage were planning. And our reporting suggests that senior Trump aides were warned that this could grow chaotic and that law enforcement may be overwhelmed. There are still significant open questions about whether those reports were taken seriously and what actions were taken, which we're continuing to report on, but perhaps the select committee will try to address.
So, Denver, to what extent, based on what Josh just said, do you think Republicans are concerned in some way about their own complicity?
Well, I mean, that's the issue, right, is where does the data lead? And if we're just looking at data and facts or facts-based analysis, to me, this is something that the Republican Party would want to know, because what if it was a lower underlying sort of infrastructure that was pushing this and it didn't get all the way to the president? Now, the thing is that the president's complicit. We know that based on his tweets and actually reacting to troll-based, issues that were either QAnon-based, conspiracy-based, and things like that. But that specific day, wouldn't we want to know what the planning looked like? How did they know it was being planned? What did the intelligence look like? What did the communications look like? Why were there logistics issues and operations issues? I would want to know that as a Republican, because I don't want that happening, to the Capitol or putting people in harm's way. That's something I want to know as an American citizen. And I think that's what's so important about this, is that we have the individuals that have the expertise to do it. Obviously, when you're listening to, the research that's been done, just like now, fantastic research on what's happening with the Trump team, when this is happening, why wouldn't we want to know all of this to prevent this in the future? Again, it's a head scratcher for some of the people, I think, in intelligence who've done analysis. Why isn't this happening? And again, that's why I would love to do this, because I would look at this, I would just follow the data, follow the facts. If you do that, you get a real idea of the battle space or the battlefield that this happened on. And I think we need to see that. I think it's actually a public service and part of our duty to find out how and why this happened and how to prevent it in the future. Yeah,
so you have volunteered, for those who don't know, to serve on this committee. And I think you just answered why it's so important to you. Any notion of whether or not you will serve?
Well, it's going to be elected members. They would probably have to, bring me on a consultant basis or something like that. But again, it's going to make people angry no matter what you do. But I don't think people being angry at doing the right thing is something that should be pushing you to a decision. I think it is about service. And again, I just find it interesting that we couldn't get a bipartisan commission through with only 35 votes on the GOP side. And I'm not a lot of people voted as conservative as I did, right? And I also find it interesting now that only 2 voted this time. And then they said it's partisan. It's just disingenuous. It's politics, and we shouldn't be playing politics with something this important.
Josh, looking at brass tacks, obviously not playing politics with something that's this important. But Josh, what is left for the committee to uncover that hasn't already been investigated?
Quite a bit, actually. As far as the White House goes, even simple questions like, at the end of Trump's speech, we all watched it. We know that he instructed his supporters to join this march, led by radicals that his closest aides have been trying to keep away from him. How exactly that happened really hasn't come out yet. The chain of events that led to that, what he was informed, how he got this idea, and outside of the White House, I think it's important to understand that the movement that culminated in the attack on the Capitol is a lot more complicated than I think people might realize at first blush. And it seems, based on our reporting, to represent potentially a darker and more lasting turn inside grassroots conservative politics, the emergence of some new figures, new tactics, new agendas that got a lot of teeth very quickly. Okay. And how exactly that happened and where it's going is could have implications and consequences far beyond just January 6th.
Josh, thank you so much. Joshua Kaplan, Denver Riggleman, thank you both for your time. We really appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.